You know, whenever we read ancient texts, there's this almost universal assumption that we're looking through a lens of metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Or just poetry.
Oh, absolutely. We always assume it's some sort of primitive understanding.
Exactly. Like we expect the language to be descriptive, sure, but inherently imprecise. We just assume the authors were standing there, looking up at the sky, seeing flat ground and a dome of stars, and, you know, just doing their best to describe a snow globe universe.
Right, a very literal snow globe. People tend to project their own modern understanding backwards onto the text, or their historical biases, really.
Yeah.
They try to wedge modern science into ancient words, like stretching the vocabulary until it completely breaks just to force it into a contemporary narrative.
Which is so frustrating to read. But what if we approach an ancient text not as poetry, but as a really rigid, mathematically precise blueprint?
Well, that completely upends the traditional paradigm of translation.
It really does. What if the exact linguistic roots of the words used to describe the cosmos thousands of years ago contain the specific, undeniable physics of, like, planetary formation or non-Euclidean geometry?
Or orbital mechanics, even. I mean, if you strip away centuries of cultural interpretation and political agendas and just look exclusively at the absolute foundational root meanings of the Arabic language, a completely different reality emerges.
You don't have to force the science into the text at all.
Exactly. The text is actually dictating the science.
And that is exactly what we're exploring today. We're doing a deep dive into a purely linguistic and geometric analysis of the Quran to uncover how it describes the shape and the movement of the earth.
It is a fascinating journey.
It really is. But before we get into the astrophysics and the etymology, I really need to establish a very clear perimeter for you listening right now. Absolutely all of the groundbreaking research we are going to cover today, the meticulous linguistic decoding, the geometric synthesis, literally everything we are discussing in this deep dive is entirely the work of Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Yes, from the Almighty Covenant YouTube channel.
Exactly. The Almighty Covenant YouTube channel. The scope of his analysis is just genuinely unprecedented.
The depth of the root word tracking is incredible. Mapping ancient Arabic morphology directly to physical realities is, well, it's a monumental body of work.
It is an absolute treasure trove.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot stress this enough. You need to go register and subscribe to the Almighty Covenant YouTube channel right now.
Definitely. Support his work. Watch the original videos.
Yeah, experience this research firsthand because it will completely reframe how you understand the intersection of language and physical reality. So, our mission today, guided by Dr. Waleed's findings, is to explore how the Quran, utilizing only the clear Arabic tongue, provides definitive proofs of a spherical, rotating Earth.
Not a flat plane.
Right, not a flat Earth. And it does this by perfectly marrying the visual human experience with profound geometric truths.
The core argument here is really that the text doesn't ask you to ignore your eyes, but it also refuses to let you ignore the mechanics of the universe.
I love that. So where do we start?
Well, it establishes the fundamental architecture of the Earth's shape first, before moving into how that shape behaves in a vacuum. And that architectural foundation begins with the concept of talkware.
Talkware, meaning the act of wrapping or rolling.
Yeah. This originates from Surah Az-Zumar, chapter 39, verse 5, which discusses wrapping the night over the day and wrapping the day over the night.
Okay, let's unpack this because in English, the word wrapping is incredibly static.
Very much so.
Like, it implies a finished object. I wrap a present or I wrap a sandwich. The object inside is already completely formed, and I am just putting a layer over
Right,
it.
the core is already there.
But in the Arabic root system, especially concerning the verb yukawiru, we're talking about a highly dynamic, constructive process, aren't we?
We are talking about the mechanics of creation itself. Dr. Waleed traces yukawiru down to its binary root, which is kur. That's K-U-R.
Okay.
To truly grasp the weight of kur, you have to look at its linguistic antithesis, which is the root rak.
Or rakik.
Exactly. Rak describes something that is wearing out, decaying, thinning, or just breaking down with repeated use.
So a state of entropy.
Yes, entropy. Therefore, kur, being the exact opposite, is not just wrapping. It is repetition and layering that results in building up.
Oh, I see.
It involves taking raw materials, breaking them down into constituent parts, and then building them up into a complex synthesized system through continuous repeated action.
Wow. I'm trying to visualize this continuous process of breaking down and building up. Like, if we look at how that root evolved in practical industrial Arabic, it points directly to processes like takrir, doesn't it?
Yes, which is the word for refining crude oil.
Right. And when you refine oil, you don't just filter it once. You apply massive heat and pressure. You break the molecular bonds of the raw material, and you run it through a distillation column, where it separates based on density.
And boiling points, yeah. The heavy sludge sinks to the bottom.
Exactly. The heavy sludge sinks, the lighter kerosenes and gases rise to the top. It's this continuous loop of thermal degradation and structural reorganization.
That is a brilliant parallel. And what's fascinating here is how flawlessly that exact industrial process translates to the astrophysics of planetary formation.
You mean like the Hadean eon of Earth?
Precisely. Planets do not manifest out of the void as solid, perfectly layered spheres. That's not how it works. They are born from violent accretion.
Just a massive protoplanetary disk of dust and gas.
Right. Dust, gas, and rocks moving in an orbit. These materials constantly collide, they break down, and as they accumulate mass, their gravitational pull actually increases, drawing in more material.
They build up.
Exactly, they build up.
And just like the oil refinery, the heat generated by these constant impacts combined with the pressure of gravity literally melts the accumulating planet into a molten sphere. It's a massive spinning crucible.
It really is. And in that molten state, planetary differentiation occurs. The heavier, denser elements like iron and nickel sink toward the center of gravity.
Forming the core.
Right. While the lighter silicate materials are pushed outward, cooling down to form the mantle and the crust, and then the lightest gases escape to form the atmosphere.
That's amazing.
This entire astrophysical mechanism, the repeated breaking down of cosmic debris, the continuous accumulation, the thermal separation by density, and the ultimate layering into a spherical body, all of it is perfectly encapsulated in the root Kur.
So the text isn't merely stating the Earth is round. It is using a verb that encodes the thermodynamic and gravitational processes required to forge a planet.
Yes. The rotation itself is the sculptor.
You know, it's like if you take a lump of clay and throw it on a potter's wheel, the centrifugal force pushing outward and your hands pressing inward, that continuous rotational pressure naturally organizes the material into a sphere.
Or a cylinder, but yes, exactly.
Right. But you cannot spin a mass on a central axis from all directions and end up with a flat square or a jagged pyramid. The rotational layering embedded in takrir inherently demands a spherical outcome.
And that leads us directly to the second geometric foundation Dr. Waleed identifies. This moves from the internal formation of the planet to its outer boundaries.
Okay, what's that?
This is the concept of Da. In Surah An-Nazi'at, chapter 79, verse 30, the text uses the word dahaha to describe the earth.
Daha. I know this word is a massive battleground in translation.
Oh, definitely.
Because people often translate daha simply as he spread it out, which immediately feeds the flat earth interpretation, right? Like if I take a rolling pin to dough, I am spreading it out. I am making it flat.
That is the colloquial trap. But Dr. Waleed's methodology forces us to look past the colloquial and really examine the strict geometric constraints of the root.
Okay, lay it on me.
Daha is derived from the roots da, meaning expansion, and had, meaning a limit or a boundary.
A limit, okay.
When we talk about a limit, we are talking about the absolute threshold of a system. Da is not infinite expansion. It is expansion strictly governed by a limit.
So it's expanding until a specific condition is met.
Exactly. Expanding until a specific geometric condition is met, at which point the system is closed.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if we map this onto geometric planes, expanding a point in one dimension gives you a line.
Right.
Expanding a line in two dimensions gives you a flat plane. But if you expand a 2D plane infinitely, it just keeps going. It never reaches a closed boundary. It just vanishes into infinity.
Correct.
So how does expanding until you hit a boundary translate to the shape of the Earth?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of topology, the only way a continuously expanding surface can create a finite closed system is if the expansion curves.
Oh, like inflating a balloon.
Yes, exactly like a balloon. The lever is expanding outward in every direction simultaneously, but it is not expanding into an infinite flat sheet.
Right.
It is expanding until all of its boundaries inevitably meet and intersect with one another, completely enclosing a volume of space.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
A flat plane has boundaries that just run away from each other forever. A sphere has boundaries that expand, wrap around, and converge.
Right. So expanding until the borders touch. A closed loop. And historically, the Arabs associated the noun form of this root, a madaha, with an ostrich egg.
An ostrich egg, which is deeply specific. I mean, it's not a perfect geometric sphere.
No, it's not.
It's an oblate spheroid, slightly bulging at the equator and flattened at the poles, which is exactly the true shape of the Earth due to its rotation.
It's uncanny. The vocabulary isn't just describing a shape, it's describing the topological process of an expanding surface curving back on itself to form a finite, three-dimensional, egg-like boundary.
That is the absolute genius of Dr. Waleed's linguistic decoding. The foundation is firmly set. The Earth was formed through the thermodynamic layering of accretion taquir, and its surface expanded into a closed, finite, oblate spheroid DA.
But establishing the shape is only half the equation. A shape existing in a void is just static.
Right, and the profound reality of human existence is that we experience movement, time, and changing light. We have to observe how this spherical geometry interacts with celestial mechanics.
Exactly. The physics of time and light. If Dr. Waleed's geometric analysis is correct, the text should describe the movement of light in a way that mathematically necessitates a curved surface.
Which brings us to the concept of the multiple easts and wests. I love this part.
It's brilliant. Throughout various surahs, the text references the Lord of the Easts and Wests in the plural, or specifically the two easts and two wests.
And to a layman reading a translation, easts and wests just sounds like a poetic amplification, doesn't it? Like a way of saying God rules everything from here to the horizon.
Yeah, that's the standard reading. But Dr. Waleed applies a rigorous geographic and temporal test to this phrase. He grounds it in physical reality by examining two highly significant historical locations.
Which ones?
Mecca, situated in the Valley of Baca, and the wider surrounding geographic region, often historically connected to Petra or Jerusalem, depending on the specific historical interpretation you follow.
Right.
For the sake of the physics model, let's take the distance between Mecca and Medina, or Mecca and any significantly localized geographic point of ancient importance. We are looking at a distance of roughly 250 to 400 kilometers.
Okay, let's stick with the 250-kilometer baseline. I mean, in the grand scheme of planetary scales, 250 kilometers is nothing. It's a micro distance. It's like the distance between Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia.
Exactly. It is a highly localized system. Now, let us apply the flat Earth model to this localized system.
Okay, let's do it.
If the Earth is a flat plane and the sun is a localized light source moving in a circle above it, the rays of light hitting a 250-kilometer stretch of ground would be effectively uniform.
Right, because it's so close.
Yes. The angle of incidence wouldn't change drastically enough to create significant localized temporal anomalies. The inhabitants of City A and City B, only 250 kilometers apart, would visually experience the sun breaking the horizon at effectively the exact same moment.
But that entirely contradicts human experience. Because of the curvature of the Earth, City A and City B have completely different local horizons.
Yes, they do.
A horizon is really just the tangent line drawn from the observer's eye to the curve of the planet. Because the surface is curving away from the light source, the sun has to travel further along its apparent path to crest the tangent line of City B compared to City A.
And what does that do?
It creates a measurable delay in sunrise, sunset, and the specific lengths of shadows throughout the day, down to the minute.
Exactly. So this raises an important question. How can a text accurately describe infinite local horizons without explicitly giving a physics lecture?
By pluralizing the east and the west.
Yes. A flat plane has one east and one west, the edge, but a sphere has an infinite number of easts and wests, uniquely localized to every single observer based on their specific coordinate on the curve.
Oh, wow. So the minute-by-minute progression of prayer times, the creeping shift of shadows over a mere 250 kilometers, this sensory experience is mathematically impossible on a flat table.
It is. The pluralization of east and west is the linguistic proof of continuous curvature.
It takes the localized daily observation of an ancient trader moving between cities and elevates it into a definitive proof of non-Euclidean geometry. The curvature creates the multiple horizons.
Perfectly stated.
But wait, a curved surface could technically be entirely stationary while the sun orbits around it, right? How does Dr. Waleed's research prove that the Earth itself is actually moving through space?
He finds that proof encoded in the verbs of celestial mechanics, specifically in surahs Al-Anbiya and Yasin. These verses state that the night and the day, along with the sun and the moon, each swim in an orbit.
Okay, Yasbahun. They swim. Now, if I am reading this casually, I naturally picture the sun and the moon as physical, spherical objects floating through the vacuum of space.
Most people do.
But the text explicitly groups night and day into this exact same action. Night and day are not physical objects.
No, they aren't.
They don't have mass. You cannot capture a jar of night. They are temporal states. They are conditions of light and shadow that are cast onto a physical object.
Which logically dictates that you cannot separate the state from the object hosting it. Ooh, if I tell you that the condition of rust is moving at 60 miles an hour down the highway, your brain immediately understands that the truck, which is rusted, is moving at 60 miles an hour.
That makes perfect sense. The state cannot travel independently of the host.
Therefore, if the text unequivocally states that the conditions of night and day are swimming in an orbit, it is a direct, unavoidable declaration that the physical location hosting those states, the Earth, is moving in an orbit.
That is a staggering deduction.
Yeah.
The text doesn't even need to say the planet Earth is flying through space.
Yeah.
Because by stating that the localized phenomena of light and dark are orbiting, the host object must be orbiting.
Exactly.
But why use the word swimming? I mean, why not say they travel or they fly or they walk?
Think about the fluid dynamics of swimming. When a body swings through water, it is not moving in a rigid, geometric straight line.
No, not at all.
Swimming requires continuous adjustment, a displacement of fluid, a rhythmic oscillating motion. It implies curved fluid momentum.
And it perfectly describes orbital mechanics. An orbit is not a straight line. It is a body in continuous free fall, curving through the fabric of space-time, influenced by the gravitational wake of heavier bodies.
Yes.
It is, quite literally, swimming through the gravitational fluid of the solar system.
Yeah.
Furthermore, an orbit is elliptical, meaning the Earth's speed varies, right?
Mm-hmm.
It moves faster at perihelion and slower at aphelion.
Right, it accelerates and decelerates.
Exactly like the stroke and glide mechanics of swimming.
Precisely. To say they travel could imply a static straight line on a flat plane. To say they swim in an orbit demands rotational elliptical momentum. The Earth is spinning on its axis to create the cycle of the states and orbiting the sun to propel those states through space.
It's just brilliant. Dr. Waleed shows how the grouping of nouns and the precise selection of verbs mathematically lock the Earth into a dynamic orbiting model.
Absolutely.
So we have the architectural shape and we have the orbital movement. This brings us to what I find to be the most cinematically beautiful part of Dr. Waleed's research. How does the ancient Arabic text describe the actual visual transition of light across this moving, curved surface?
Right, when the sun sets, what exactly is happening linguistically?
Exactly.
Well, it is described through a vocabulary of intense physical precision. Let's look at Surah Yasin, chapter 36, verse 37. The verse uses the word naslaku, stating that the day is stripped or skinned from the night.
Salak. To skin or flay, honestly, it sounds incredibly violent at first glance.
It does, but we must examine the physical action of salak in its ancient context. If a butcher is skinning a sheep, they are dealing with a three-dimensional curved form.
Right.
You cannot skin an animal by grabbing a corner of the hide and ripping it off in a single flat motion like pulling a sheet off a bed. The act of salak requires continuous, encompassing circular motion. You have to peel the layer away by rotating around the curves of the body.
Okay, let's unpack this with atmospheric physics. If the Earth were a flat, infinite plane, and the sun were just a spotlight moving overhead, the terminator line, the line dividing light from dark, would be a harsh, immediate boundary.
Exactly.
The transition from day to night would be instantaneous. You have full daylight, and the second the sun moved past your visual limit, you would be plunged into total, absolute darkness. It would be exactly like flipping a light switch.
But our visual reality is fundamentally different. The daylight is not yanked away instantly. It is extracted gradually.
Right. Because the Earth is a rotating sphere, and because we have an atmosphere, the light scatters. As the curve of the Earth rotates away from the sun, the light hits the atmosphere at increasingly shallow angles.
Yes.
So we experience sunset, then civil twilight, where you can still see shapes, then nautical twilight, where the horizon gets murky, then astronomical twilight, where the last scattering of photons fades and the stars appear. The daylight is being slowly, meticulously peeled back along the curve of the planet.
And Dr. Waleed points out that salak carries the secondary linguistic nuance of khalasa, which means to take something gently, stealthily, and gradually.
Wow.
So it is not a violent ripping at all. It is a smooth, continuous extraction. The gradient of twilight, the slow shifting of atmospheric scattering, can only occur if a curved surface is rotating at a steady, continuous speed away from a light source.
That's incredible.
The word salak encodes the necessity of a spherical geometry interacting with a gaseous atmosphere. It is the visual physics of dusk perfectly captured in a single root word.
So salak is the peeling away of the day, creating dusk. But what about the other side of the planetary rotation? What about dawn and the reintroduction of light?
For that, we look at surahs Al-Hadid and Al-Hajj, which describe merging the night into the day and merging the day into the night. The specific verb used is walaja.
Okay, merging implies two distinct entities blending seamlessly.
Yes, but to fully appreciate the precision of walaja, Dr. Waleed contrasts it with another root word, tajala. Tahala means to appear abruptly, to reveal, or to manifest with clarity. If I turn on a floodlight in a dark room, the light tahala, it reveals itself instantly.
So, from the perspective of the sun in the vacuum of space, it is constantly emitting light. It is in a perpetual state of tahala, just radiating outward.
Exactly. The light of the sun manifests continuously. However, from the perspective of an observer on the rotating surface of the Earth, that light does not just blink into existence.
No, it doesn't.
As the planet rotates into the path of the sun's rays, the darkness smoothly, seamlessly recedes, and the light penetrates the atmosphere. The light and the darkness walaja, they merge into one another along the terminator line.
It's like a perpetual gradient moving across a sphere.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Tahala and walaja describe the exact same physical phenomenon from two different relativistic perspectives.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The sun reveals, which is Tahala, but the Earth's rotation causes the observer to experience a merging, which is walaja. You cannot have a smooth merging of day into night on a flat plane. The geometry just doesn't support the gradual diffusion of light.
Right, because it would just be on or off.
Exactly. It explicitly requires a rotating, curved surface where the angle of incidence is constantly shifting. The text is describing the light as a garment being endlessly, smoothly rolled and unrolled over a sphere.
I am continually struck by how Dr. Waleed's research demonstrates the absolute coherence of these roots. I mean, every word acts as a failsafe against a flat Earth interpretation.
It really does.
But we've mostly talked about the surface so far, the expanding boundaries, the horizons, the light playing across the atmosphere. Does the linguistic analysis penetrate deeper? Does it describe the internal three-dimensional geometry of the planet itself?
It does, profoundly. And this is where the mathematical rigor of the Arabic language truly shines. Let's examine Surah Ar-Rahman, chapter 55, verse 33. The text issues a challenge to entities to try and pass beyond the zones or diameters of the heavens and the earth. The Arabic word used here is akar, which is the plural of qatar.
Akar. Translators often render this as regions, zones, or boundaries, right? But Dr. Waleed argues it is a strictly geometric term.
Absolutely. To prove this, he contrasts qatar with the word turik, which translates to paths, roads, or tracks. This distinction is the linchpin of the 3D geometric proof.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about drawing a map. If you have a flat, two-dimensional piece of paper and you draw a line from city A to city B, you have created a turik, a path. It exists entirely on the x and y axes. It has length and width, but zero depth.
Right, it traverses a surface.
But a quater, a diameter, is a fundamentally different mathematical vector. A diameter cannot exist on a purely 2D surface.
Oh, it can't.
By definition, a diameter must connect three specific coordinates. It connects 2 points on the outer circumference of a body, but the line connecting them must pass directly through a single internal core, the exact center of the object.
Oh, wow. So what does this all mean for the spatial coordinates of the Earth?
It means that by actively choosing the word atar instead of a word for flat paths or surface boundaries, the text is issuing a mathematical mandate.
A mandate.
Yes, it is declaring that the Earth is not a planar surface you can simply walk across. It is a volumetric, three-dimensional object that possesses an outer circumference and an internal core. You can only have a diameter if you have a 3D sphere.
That is undeniable vector geometry. If you challenge someone to cross the diameters of the Earth, you are acknowledging that the Earth has depth, a center of gravity, and a surrounding crust. You are describing a globe.
Precisely.
But wait, if the Earth is a perfect globe, what about the verses that talk about its edges? This is a huge sticking point. In Surahs Arad and Al-Anbiya, the text mentions reducing the Earth from its edges or borders.
Yes, the word used is atraf.
Okay, here's where I need to play devil's advocate. If I am a flat earther, this is my golden ticket. If I say a table has edges, I am talking about the point where the table ends and the floor begins. the point where you fall off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A sphere, by its very geometric nature, does not have an edge. It is a continuous, unbroken curve.
Mm-hmm.
If the Quran says the earth has edges, doesn't that logically imply it is a flat disk?
That is the most common linguistic trap in this entire field of study. And Dr. Waleed dismantles it brilliantly by diving into the morphology of the root.
How so?
The root word is atraf, which translates to extremities or multiple sides. He pairs this with its morphological mirror, the root ifrat, which means to exceed limits or to overflow.
Okay, so we have extremities, atraf, and exceeding boundaries, ifrat. How does this counter the flat earth edge?
Let's visualize the geometry of a flat disk. Imagine a coin resting on a table. How many outer boundaries or edges does that coin have?
Well, it has one. It's a single continuous circumference that wraps around the flat face.
Exactly. A flat disk possesses a singular, continuous 2D boundary. If you were to reduce a flat disk from its edge, you would simply be shrinking that one singular ring inward toward the center. But the text does not say edge singular. It uses the plural atraf, multiple extremities. Now let's look at the geometry of a sphere. From the perspective of the exact center of a sphere, how many extremities stretch outward to form the surface?
Well, infinite. If you draw a radius from the center to the surface, you can draw an infinite number of radii. Every single point on the surface of a sphere is an extremity relative to its core.
Precisely. A sphere does not have one edge. It has infinite tangent points, infinite extremities pointing outward in every conceivable three-dimensional vector. And the Vos specifies that the Earth is being reduced from these multiple extremities. If we look at the actual geology and physics of our planet, what are these extremities?
They're the tectonic plates, the land masses, the continents, the continental shelves that jet out into the oceans.
Yes. The surface of our planet is not a smooth, perfect billiard ball. It is a jagged, shifting, dynamic crust. And what is happening to those extremities every single second of every single day?
They're changing.
They are experiencing erosion, coastal reduction, tectonic subduction, where one plate is being ground down beneath another. The land masses are constantly, relentlessly being reduced from all sides simultaneously all over the globe.
And while one side is being reduced, which is atraf, magma is welling up in the mid-ocean ridges, creating new crust, exceeding the previous boundaries, which is ifrat.
Exactly.
It's a continuous geological cycle of reduction and expansion happening on an infinite number of 3D planes simultaneously.
It is the perfect description of a dynamic, spherical, tectonically active planet. A flat disk eroding would just shrink its one 2D ring. A spherical Earth has millions of coastlines, millions of extremities, constantly interacting with the hydrosphere and the atmosphere, reducing the rock into sand and washing it into the sea.
Wow.
Atraf isn't a singular drop-off point at the end of a flat world. It represents the infinite three-dimensional vertices of a complex spherical surface.
This research by Dr. Khaled Waleed on the Almighty Covenant YouTube channel is just astonishing. It takes what people assume are ancient, ignorant descriptions of a flat world and proves that they are, in fact, highly sophisticated descriptions of vector geometry and tectonic geology.
It's paradigm-shifting work.
But to be intellectually honest, we have to look at the other side of the coin. We have to address the specific vocabulary that the flat earth proponents champion. We can't just highlight the geometric proofs and ignore the verses that, on the surface, seem to explicitly state the Earth is flat.
Absolutely. A rigorous analysis must synthesize all the data, not just the convenient data. And this brings us to what I consider the absolute masterstroke of Dr. Waleed's research.
Reconciling the two.
Yes, reconciling the visual phenomenology of human experience with the physical reality of the cosmos. He takes the four main terms used by flat Earth advocates, drills down to their foundational roots, and proves that they actually reinforce the spherical model by describing the psychology of human perception and the physical reality of gravity.
Let's take them one by one. I really want to dissect these thoroughly. Term number one is sutihat. This is found in Surah al-Ghashiyah, and it is almost universally translated as spread out flat.
Yes, that's a standard translation.
When people read the Earth, how it is spread out flat, the argument seems open and shut.
It seems that way until you look at the root. Dr. Waleed traces sutihat back to the root, STH. Linguistically, this root is deeply connected to the word sabata.
Sabata.
And sabata in ancient Arabic culture means fatherless, or a person lacking a guardian or a patriarch.
Okay, wait. How on earth does the concept of being an orphan or lacking a father figure translate to the geometric shape of a planet?
To understand this, you have to understand how the ancient Arabs viewed guardianship and structure. A father, a patriarch, or a tribal leader represents a boundary.
Okay.
They represent a protective wall, a defined limit, a structured environment that boxes you in and governs your behavior. To be sabata fatherless is to be outside those boundaries. It means to exist in a state that lacks visible governing limits. It is to be unbounded.
Oh. Okay, let's unpack this from the perspective of human perception. If I am an ancient nomad standing in the middle of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter desert, or if I'm a sailor out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I look out at the horizon, my visual reality is that the Earth is a vast, endless expanse.
Exactly.
It completely lacks any visible walls, any governing boundaries, or any visible center. To my naked eye, the landscape is unbounded. It is sabata.
Exactly. The word sutihad is not making an ontological claim about the absolute objective geometry of the entire planetary mass in the vacuum of space. It is making a phenomenological statement about the localized visual experience of a human being standing on the surface.
Because the sphere is just so huge.
Yes. Because the sphere is so astronomically massive relative to the human observer, the local tangent plane appears completely flat and unbounded. The text is acknowledging the human experience. Look at the Earth, how it appears as an endless, unbounded plane to you.
That is brilliant. It validates human perception without compromising the macro physics. The Earth looks flat to us because it is so huge. Okay, term number 2, madadnaha. This is often translated as extended, and flat earthers argue that if you extend a surface, you are stretching it out into a flat plane.
Dr. Waleed traces madadnaha to the root mdd. In the ancient morphology of the language, this root is intrinsically linked to the word dam, which means blood.
Blood. Okay, so we're moving from orphans to biology. How does blood explain geometry?
Think about the fundamental nature of the cardiovascular system. Your blood vessels are an extension. Veins and arteries extend outward from the heart, reaching the very tips of your fingers and toes. But what is the critical architectural feature of that extension?
It's a closed loop. The blood extends outward, but it must inevitably return to the heart to be oxygenated again. It never just extends infinitely into nothingness.
Precisely. Dam represents an extension within a closed cyclical system. Therefore, when the text uses madadnaha to describe the extension of the Earth, it is not describing a flat line extending out into an infinite void.
It's describing a non-Euclidean extension.
Yes. If you draw a straight line on the surface of a sphere, a geodesic, and you keep extending it forward, it will not shoot off into space. It will curve along the geometry of the sphere, circumnavigate the globe, and eventually return to the exact point where it started.
Wow. So madadnaha is literally describing the geometry of a globe. It is an extension that operates as a closed circulatory loop. You can travel endlessly, but you are contained within the finite system of the sphere. That completely neutralizes the flat Earth argument.
It turns their own vocabulary against their model. Let's look at the third term, frashnaha, which is frequently translated as spread or furnished, like laying down a flat carpet over a floor.
Right, a carpet is flat.
But Dr. Waleed traces the root fresh to its deeper linguistic connection, masharif, which translates to outskirts, frontiers, or multiple boundaries.
This echoes the concept of atraf, the infinite extremities we discussed earlier.
It is entirely consistent. Frashnaha is not a flat 2D carpet. It is the concept of possessing multiple frontiers radiating outward in all directions. A flat surface expanding outward only has one continuous frontier, its outer edge.
But a sphere.
A sphere, growing from its molten core, has infinite frontiers radiating outward in 360 degrees, creating the spherical crust. The furnishing of the Earth is the topological wrapping of its surface around its 3D core, creating infinite outskirt boundaries.
The internal consistency of Dr. Waleed's linguistic map is just stunning. Okay, we have one final term to tackle. Term number 4, mihadan. This is arguably the most cited verse. It is translated as making the Earth a resting place or a bed. A bed is flat, a bed is stationary, a bed is passive. How does mihadan prove a moving sphere?
This is perhaps the most profound revelation in the entire study. Dr. Waleed demonstrates that the root of mihadan is MHD. When you trace the ancient usage of MHD, it connects to the word dam. And dam does not mean a soft, passive resting place.
What does it mean?
Dam means a strict meeting, a powerful converging, or even a violent collision.
A collision. How is a resting place a collision?
What's fascinating here is that dam is the ancient linguistic equivalent of describing Newtonian physics.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate proof of gravity.
Okay, let's unpack this. If the Earth is a sphere, spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, and hurtling through the vacuum of space at tens of thousands of miles an hour? Why don't we fly off? Why aren't we flung into the void?
Because of the curvature of space-time created by mass. Gravity. There is a constant, invisible, powerful force accelerating your physical mass directly toward the center of the Earth's mass.
Right.
Because the ground is in your way, you are in a constant, perpetual state of meeting or colliding with the surface of the planet.
Oh my God. The normal force. Physics dictates that gravity pulls me down and the ground pushes back up against me. We're in a constant mutual state of collision.
Yes. Mihadan does not mean a passive flat cushion. It signifies an active, forceful anchoring. The Earth is a resting place only because it possesses the gravitational mass required to actively attract and hold you to its surface.
That is wild.
If the Earth did not actively collide with you through gravity, you'd be lost to the chaos of the cosmos. Mihadan is the linguistic acknowledgement that the Earth pulls you to its breast, keeping you safe on the exterior of a spinning rock.
That completely flips the script. The very word flat earthers use to argue the Earth is a stationary bed is actually the ancient Arabic articulation of gravitational attraction.
It really is.
If we look at the grand synthesis of Dr. Waleed's research, the Quran is executing an absolute masterclass in simultaneous multidimensional description. It isn't contradicting itself when it uses words that seem flat alongside words that seem round. It is flawlessly balancing three distinct levels of reality in a single vocabulary.
It perfectly balances the phenomenological, the mechanical, and the geometric. It acknowledges the visual human experience that the vastness of the local horizon appears unbounded and fatherless, sutihat. It defines the physical reality of the mechanics, the closed circulatory loops of navigation, madadnaha, and the profound anchoring force of gravity, mihadan. And it dictates the undeniable geometric truth, the three-dimensional diameters penetrating a core, atar, and the expanding spherical boundary forming an oblate spheroid, da.
There is zero contradiction. There is only a terrifyingly profound depth of vocabulary that we have spent centuries misunderstanding because we refuse to look at the roots. And depth is exactly what we promised on this deep dive. Let's take a moment to trace the full arc of the journey we've been on today. We started in the fiery crucible of the Hadean Eon with Takwir, the thermodynamic breaking down and layering of planetary accretion, spinning raw materials into a spherical core.
We move to Da, understanding how an expanding surface must curve in on itself to create a finite closed boundary, echoing the oblate spheroid of an ostrich egg.
We analyzed the brilliant trigonometry of the multiple easts and wests, showing how the shifting gradients of shadows and twilight over a highly localized 250-kilometer distance mathematically obliterate the possibility of a flat plane, proving the existence of infinite local horizons on a curve.
We decoded the fluid mechanics of Yazbahun, realizing that because the temporal states of night and day cannot exist independently of a physical host, the Earth itself must be swimming through the gravitational currents of an elliptical orbit.
We visualized the cinematic atmospheric scattering of light through Salak and Walaja, the stealthy three-dimensional skinning of the day from the curvature of the planet, and the continuous seamless merging of light into darkness along a rotating terminator line.
We penetrated the deep core of the planet with Akhar, proving the existence of true mathematical diameters requiring a 3D volume. And we observed the infinite, eroding tectonic extremities of Atraf constantly interacting on the globe's surface.
And finally, we dismantled the flat Earth vocabulary, revealing that ancient terms for spreading embeds are actually sophisticated descriptions of unbounded visual horizons, closed geodesic loops, and the inescapable collision of gravitational pull.
The linguistic coherence is, quite frankly, staggering. It bridges the gap between ancient morphology and modern astrophysics without dropping a single syllable.
It really is. And I want to say this one final time, as clearly as I can. This profound linguistic, geometric, and physical synthesis is the exclusive, brilliant research of Dr. Khaled Waleed. I want to directly address you, the listener. If this deep dive has expanded your mind, even a fraction as much as it expanded ours, you owe it to yourself to go register and subscribe to the Almighty Covenant YouTube channel immediately.
You really do.
Support Dr. Waleed, watch his original videos, see him map these Arabic roots visually, engage with the original source material. It will permanently alter the lens through which you view historical texts, language, and the physical universe itself.
It is a paramount example of why we must strip away our modern hubris and our assumed biases when approaching these texts. We must let the structural mechanics of the language speak for itself, which leaves me with this final thought for you to carry with you.
Lay it on us.
If a text written centuries ago can flawlessly describe the thermodynamics of planetary accretion, the non-Euclidean geometry of closed surface loops, and the active physics of gravitational attraction simply through the foundational roots of its vocabulary, what other immense physical realities of our universe, what laws of quantum mechanics or dark matter are hiding in plain sight within these texts, simply waiting for us to truly understand the definitions of the words we speak every day?
That is the ultimate question. The ancient vocabulary isn't muddy water we have to peer through. It is the absolute precision of an X-ray, waiting for us to learn how to read the film. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and until next time, keep diving deep.